One aspect of Active Directory that's very interesting is the ability to create these domain controllers and then remove them later if you need to. Now, this can be somewhat tricky, so this is something you need to pay close attention to. Now, there are two types of servers in an Active Directory domain. There is the domain controller, which is what we're talking about here. This is a machine that will handle login requests. It will enforce security, lots of functionalities providing the directory services. And then there's what's called a member server. This is a server that's joined to the domain, but it's there just to be a file server or to perform some functionality, but it's not a domain controller. It doesn't handle logins, perform security functions, or anything like that. Now, there's a third type of server, but it's not an Active Directory domain. That's a standalone server. It's not in any way affiliated with an Active Directory domain. Now, quick review here. A domain controller provides a number of security and network services, user account management, logins, permissions, and all domain controllers function in a multi-master replication mode with each other. So that means changes can be made to any domain controller. We can even remove a domain controller fairly painlessly most of the time, and the other domain controllers will take over and continue working. There's no effect on the users, and any changes that are made by the removal of that particular domain controller gets automatically and securely replicated to all the other domain controllers or DCs, and everybody's happy. Now, do keep in mind here, and I won't go into it right here, we'll get it in another course, there are 5 master operations roles that live on one server, multiple servers in the domain, depends on how many controllers you have, and you don't want to remove one of these. It will warn you if it's about to happen, but you don't want to lose one of these master operations. Now, a second ago, I said that this functions in a multi-master replication mode, meaning you can make a change on any server and it gets replicated to the others. Well, there are 5 operations that have to live on one individual server, and they can't be multi-master replication. The change can only happen in one place, and then it gets replicated out. And that's what I'm talking about there. So as long as you're not removing something that has one of those master operations, you're okay. So removing a domain controller is also called a demotion. We're going to demote it from a domain controller back down to a member server. And it'll still be a server joined to the domain, but it's no longer functioning as a domain controller. And it will no longer provide any login or security functions. However, if it is the last domain controller in your domain, it won't go down to a member server. It will become a standalone server, and that domain will be deleted and it won't exist. So you want to be kind of careful with this, obviously. So what I want to do here is I want to jump out into the Start menu. I just hit my Windows key, and I'll go into the Server Manager, and you'll notice I'm on the local server. It'll probably come up on Dashboard, and I am in Local Server. And I'll just go over here to Tools. Actually, I'll go to Manage. And notice I'll choose to remove roles and features. Now, I'll just click Next on this first page. That's the server I want to work on. That's my local server. And to remove the server role, notice I'll just clear the checkbox on Active Directory Domains and Services. So I clicked that. It brought up this window, and it's basically saying, okay, I see that you want to remove the domain services role, but do you also want to remove all the administration tools? Well, I'll say, no, I'll keep those. So I'll just clear that and they go away. Then I can hit Continue. Now notice it immediately pops up and says, hey, wait a minute, fella. You can't do this. I've got some problems with what you're trying to do here. So you need to first demote this domain controller. And so if I click Demote this domain controller, now it tells me I've got a credentials issue, and it says that I can change this, okay? Well, I could go change this to the administrator account. I don't want to do that. I'll end it right here by telling you, notice, I can force the removal of this domain controller. Usually this happens if I've got a problem with Active Directory. But notice this is the important one. If I check this one, it's the last domain controller in the domain. then it's going to demote it. It won't even be a member server. It will destroy the domain and everything. If I don't choose last domain controller, it means there are other domain controllers in that domain, and this one will just be demoted down to a member server level. All right? So I won't go through the rest of this. You can go through this on your own and play with it, but just keep in mind that demoting or removing Active Directory involves demoting that server, but it could also involve deleting a domain if that controller is the last controller in that domain. So that's just a little tweak there on adding and removing Active Directory domain controllers.